Hi, I'm a lady who works as a cook. I recently got married, and I'm really enjoying being a newlywed. I usually keep my past to myself and don't talk much about it. I don't have many friends, but I tell people I grew up like any other kid, even though it wasn't that simple. I had a tough childhood, but I was lucky to have my grandpa who loved me a lot. He was like my only family because I didn't have parents around. My grandpa worked hard, sometimes at construction sites or collecting and selling things like paper or fruits and veggies. I don't have baby photos because we couldn't afford them, but when I turned 6, my grandpa made sure I had a picture taken every year on my birthday to capture my growth. I didn't go to kindergarten, but my grandpa taught me basics like the alphabet and numbers. My grandpa didn't have much money, but he was well respected in our neighborhood. The neighbors would pitch in to help take care of me because they knew my grandpa was working hard to raise me. This meant I got to have warm meals and play with the older kids in the neighborhood, who taught me a lot of things. When my grandpa finished work, he'd come get me. Our house was small and old, with just one bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. It could get pretty uncomfortable in the extremes of weather, but we managed okay. In the summer, my grandpa fixed up an old fan he found, and in the winter, he washed and reused old blankets to keep me warm. He did everything he could to take care of me, even though we didn't have much. Our neighbors were also struggling, but they still helped us a lot. They came to school with me on my first day, took turns attending parent-teacher meetings at my grandpa's request, and even packed food for my school trips as a way to say thank you for his hard work. My grandpa was a handyman who could fix just about anything around the house. In our friendly neighborhood, people helped each other out with their skills, but gossip still circulated. Some folks couldn't help but wonder why my grandpa was raising me alone in such tough circumstances. He never really talked about my parents when I was growing up. Whenever I asked, he'd just say they had passed away soon after I was born and were now in heaven. When I was younger, I thought they had died from some serious illness like cancer. But as I got older, I started hearing different stories, mainly from the women in the neighborhood. They'd whisper about how my grandpa had never been married and how nobody had ever seen my mom or dad. It was confusing because my grandpa had always told me they were my real parents. And if I had parents, shouldn't I have had a grandma too? It didn't add up. As I listened to her, I realized something strange. We didn't have any family photos of my parents, not even one of my grandma. Our photo album only contained pictures that my grandpa insisted we take every year, along with some snapshots our neighbors had taken of us. When I reached middle school and started going through puberty, I began to rebel a bit, questioning my identity more and more. Living only with my grandpa made it even harder. I had so many questions about my parents, and by 9th grade, I couldn't hold them in any longer. I sat my grandpa down and bombarded him with questions, desperate for answers about where my mom and dad were, whether they were alive or dead, and why there were no photos of them or my grandma. I felt like I was interrogating him like a criminal, but I needed to know. As I got emotional and started crying, my grandpa just held me close and reassured me. He explained that my parents couldn't raise me, so they left me with him when I was a baby, hoping to come back for me someday. He showed me a small bracelet they had left behind, saying it was with me when I was born in the hospital. Seeing that bracelet, some of my curiosity eased. Even though I learned that my parents had abandoned me, knowing that my grandpa loved me and raised me with care was enough. From that day on, I started to find some peace within myself. I began to see a way out of the challenges of puberty. College wasn't an option for me due to our financial situation, and I didn't want to add to my grandpa's burdens, so I made up my mind about my career before even starting high school. "Grandpa," I said, "I want to be a cook. I plan to take career classes during my senior year, earn my cooking license, and find a job right after graduation." My grandpa asked if I was sure I didn't want to go to college, offering to do whatever it took to save up for tuition. I reassured him that cooking was my passion and that I wanted to set things up so he wouldn't feel guilty about it. True to my word, once I reached my senior year of high school, I dove into cooking classes and earned several licenses. I secured a job a month before graduation and received my first paycheck just a week after. With it, I bought some steak to celebrate, though I couldn't afford to dine out. Back home, I surprised my grandpa with the steak and handed him an envelope containing some of my earnings. "This is for you, Grandpa," I said. "It's what's left after buying the steaks." My grandpa was speechless. "Patty," he finally said, "I can't accept this. You worked hard for this money. You should use it for yourself. I can't possibly take it." He insisted, pushing the envelope back toward me. "Grandpa, if you don't take it, I'll leave home. Why should you be the only one doing things for me? I really wanted to give you this money," I threatened, feeling a surge of frustration. Eventually, my grandpa relented, tears welling up as he accepted the envelope. He tucked it into a book he enjoyed reading. Sharing that steak meal in the place I'd always called home felt incredibly special. For the first time in my life, I felt proud to do something for my grandpa. We chatted happily as we ate, until a knock interrupted us. Who could be knocking at this hour? My grandpa wondered aloud as I went to answer the door. To our surprise, 2 police officers stood there. "Is Richard O'Leary here?" they asked, and I confirmed that he was my grandpa. "And you must be Patty Rowland?" they inquired, and I affirmed that too. "Both of you need to come with us to the police station," they stated matter-of-factly. When I asked why, they informed us, "Mr. O'Leary is being accused of kidnapping a child. You both need to come with us." I was stunned. Kidnapping. I couldn't fathom why my grandpa was being accused of such a heinous crime. I protested that he wasn't that kind of person, but the police insisted we accompany them. That night, my grandpa and I found ourselves in a police car headed to the station. Despite the gravity of the situation, my grandpa remained oddly calm. We waited in a designated area until eventually, the police returned with some other individuals accompanying them. A woman in her 50s entered the room, accompanied by a couple holding hands. She approached us, pointing accusingly at my grandpa. "That's him. He's the one who kidnapped the president's daughter." She exclaimed loudly, shocked and confused. I demanded answers. "What do you mean? Who did my grandpa supposedly kidnap?" I shouted back at her. The police intervened, trying to calm both the woman and me down. Behind the shouting woman, the couple stepped forward, and the woman addressed me with tears in her eyes. "Are you Patty?" she asked, and I awkwardly nodded in response. Suddenly, she embraced me and burst into tears. "Patty, it's Mom. I'm your mother." Her words hit me like a bolt from the blue. I was stunned and bewildered, but my grandpa's composed demeanor added to my confusion. He stood up calmly and addressed her. "So, you finally returned. Only now. Are you okay?" The woman in her 50s scoffed, accusing my grandpa of kidnapping. I vehemently protested his innocence, while the couple watched on, clearly perplexed. The woman in her 50s went on to explain that a couple had visited her orphanage, claiming they had left their baby there and had now returned to reclaim their child. They left behind a letter stating their intention to return for the child, along with hospital paperwork. I was about 3 or 4 at the time. However, despite searching through records and adoption papers, we found nothing about the child. Then, a distant memory surfaced. There was a child who went missing years ago, causing a major commotion. Despite reporting to the police and filing missing child reports, she was never found. I recalled an old man who used to work at the orphanage abruptly quitting around that time. He had been overly attentive to the children, and I had considered firing him before he vanished. Could he have been involved in kidnapping a child from the orphanage, leaving behind a distraught woman? We underwent DNA testing as my grandpa calmly observed the couple. He asked the police, "Are they truly Patty's parents?" The police insisted we wait for the results. Then, my grandpa pleaded with the officers, offering to stay in jail if necessary, but asking for the chance to tell his side of the story. Grasping the officer's hands, he began to speak. The police acknowledged his right to defend himself. Grandpa agreed to share his story once the DNA confirmed the couple's parentage. Reluctantly, the police consulted the couple, who agreed to the arrangement if it meant hearing the truth. While awaiting the DNA results, my grandpa remained at home under recognizance, and I continued my routine going to and from work. 2 days later, the DNA results came in, showing a 99.99% match. After 20 years, I finally met my parents. Hearing the news, I was overcome with a strange mix of emotions. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably, but my parents embraced me, soothing my sobs. The orphanage director glared at my grandpa with fury, as if she could kill him on the spot. "Now you must arrest this old man for kidnapping. Were you planning to ruin my establishment?" She raged, her anger palpable. True to his word, my grandpa began his tale, producing a stack of papers from home and presenting them to the police one by one. "It's true that I worked as a janitor at the orphanage, not far from where I live now," he began. "One morning, I arrived early to find a young child sleeping outside the orphanage, curled up in a ball. I assumed she had been abandoned by her parents. Concerned for her well-being, I tried to bring her inside, but she woke up and, with her black eyes, called me Grandpa." Grandpa continued, explaining how the child handed him a bag containing a doll, paperwork, and a letter promising to return for their daughter. "I took her into the orphanage, where she began to live," he recounted. "While cleaning, I often saw the child, but she always seemed to have a dark expression. It wasn't until about a month later that I discovered the reason. The woman was abusing her, especially when the orphanage faced financial strain due to overcrowding. Another child had arrived, and she took out her frustration on this poor girl." Grandpa described how the child was forced to do arduous chores, her hands red and bleeding from the harsh treatment. "I confronted the director multiple times, urging her to stop mistreating the child," he continued. "But instead of listening, she fired me. As I was leaving, I couldn't bear to see the child so unhappy. That's why I did what I did," my grandpa explained, his voice tinged with remorse. He recounted how he had taken me in after witnessing the neglect and abuse I suffered under the orphanage director's care. "The director didn't even bother to read the documents in the bag," he continued, "neglecting her duties and subjecting me to abuse. That's why I took Patty in, to protect her and raise her as my own granddaughter." After his revelation, the police and I were left in a state of uncertainty. The orphanage director, however, remained defiant, accusing my grandpa of fabricating stories to tarnish her reputation. "I'll sue you for slander," she threatened, her voice dripping with venom. The police pressed my grandpa for evidence to support his claims. With confidence, he mentioned a former employee, Mrs. Cumberland, who could attest to the abuse. While we awaited Mrs. Cumberland's testimony, I was speechless, grappling with the truth unfolding before me. In the late afternoon, Mrs. Cumberland arrived at the police station, armed with photographs she had taken of my injured hands and other signs of abuse. My parents, upon seeing the evidence, were overcome with emotion. The undeniable proof left the orphanage director cornered, and my parents wasted no time in announcing their intention to sue her for her crimes. Despite her pleas for forgiveness, she was arrested and charged with child abuse. That night, my grandpa and I returned home, the weight of the day's revelations heavy on our minds. From my parents, I learned the heartbreaking truth. They had left me at the orphanage due to financial hardship, hoping to reclaim me once they were stable. When they finally returned, they discovered I was missing and unregistered. Only recently did they learn of the possibility that my grandpa had taken me in. Although their actions couldn't be excused, my parents found solace in the fact that they had finally found me after years of searching. They faced repercussions for abandoning me, but now they sought to alleviate their guilt. I harbored no resentment toward my parents. I was simply eager and anxious to finally meet them. Nor did I hold any blame toward my grandpa, who had saved me and showered me with love and care during my time with him. His unwavering support was the reason I couldn't hate my parents. I assured them that I understood their circumstances and expressed gratitude for their efforts to find me. As my mom hugged me, tears streaming down her face, she knelt before my grandpa. Without him, I wouldn't have had such a wonderful upbringing, she acknowledged. Despite his protests, my parents insisted on taking care of him and urged us to live together as one family. Eventually, we moved in with my parents, but the adjustment wasn't easy, as we had spent more time apart than together. Eventually, my parents arranged for a separate house for my grandpa and me next to theirs, allowing us to live comfortably while still being close to family. After work, we would gather for dinner and watch TV together, just like any other family. After I got married, my parents invited my grandpa to live with us, and we seamlessly merged into one big family. Meanwhile, my parents pursued legal action against the orphanage director, adamant that they couldn't forgive her. During the proceedings, I met my husband, who was working as a prosecutor on the case. He admired my grandpa's selflessness in raising a child who wasn't his own for nearly 2 decades. It made me reflect on whether I could have done the same in his shoes. I hold my grandpa in the highest regard and wish him a long and healthy life. Thank you all for listening to my story. Your support and comments mean a lot to me. Wishing you all a day filled with happiness and good fortune.
My name is Bill, a 31-year-old working mom. I live with my husband Davy, who's also 31 and holds a regular job, and our 5-year-old daughter Lenny, who's recently turned into quite the chatterbox. We're just an average family, neither rich nor poor, and we get along great. But soon, our peaceful home was about to be disrupted. The storm approaching our home was none other than my mother-in-law. Davy's father had passed away, and his mother lived alone. When we got married, Davy and I had decided not to live with her. It just seemed simpler that way. Davy, being her only child born later in her life, had been married to me for 5 years. His mother-in-law was now getting older, and living alone at her age could be tough and even dangerous. Davy would visit her when he could, but it seemed she was struggling. Seeing my husband trying so hard on his own, I made a decision. If Davy was doing his best, how could I not support him as his wife? So, I gathered my courage and suggested to Davy that we should all live together. He looked surprised and asked, "Are you sure?" Truthfully, I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I felt something needed to change. Balancing housework, childcare, and my part-time job was already a challenge, and if anything happened to mother-in-law, Davy would be the one to handle it. After discussing these important matters, we began living together. On a spring day with cherry blossoms falling, mother-in-law arrived at our home with tears in her eyes. I had thought living with such a humble woman would be smooth sailing, but I was mistaken. Initially reserved, as days passed, her true colors began to show. She started to torment me. "Bill, this dish is too salty. Can you make it lighter?" When I did, she'd criticize, "Why is it so bland? Are you mocking the elderly? How rude." And that was just the beginning. "Please hand wash all my clothes. They'll get ruined in the machine. They're all expensive, you know," she demanded. When I suggested dry cleaning, she retorted, "That's wasteful. You've lived comfortably thanks to my son, so stop wasting money and start saving." Clearly, she was just trying to annoy me. And that was just the beginner's level. Intermediate level torment went like this. "Bill, are you wearing makeup? It won't help. You're too plain." She'd comment on my appearance despite spending over 2 hours on her own makeup each morning, looking like a different person without it. I respect her desire to look beautiful, but isn't her foundation a bit too pale? I think to myself. What was worse, she threw away my precious makeup set. Nonchalantly, she said, "Makeup won't help you. It's a waste of money. Live without it. I'm the most thoughtful family member. You should be grateful." This relentless torment only occurred when we were alone, always waiting for moments when my husband was away and our daughter was at kindergarten. I didn't want to speak negatively about her to my husband, since she's his mother, but I wished he would listen. After much consideration, I hinted at my frustrations, but it seemed to have little effect. "I'll talk to Mom," he said, attempting to address the situation. However, mother-in-law would cry, claiming I was making things up. At one point, he even accused me of trying to deceive him. Feeling increasingly powerless, I remembered the saying, "Seeing is believing." Deciding to secretly record my interactions with my mother-in-law, I carefully placed the camera. As I pondered this, the torment from my mother-in-law escalated to an advanced level. We had moved in with her in spring, and as summer faded into autumn, one winter day arrived. My husband was away on a business trip, and our daughter was staying with my parents. It was snowing heavily outside. Normally, I would bike to my part-time job, but due to the weather, I walked and returned in the evening. Upon arriving home, I usually cleaned, did laundry, and prepared dinner. However, on this cold winter night with heavy snowfall, hand-washing delicate laundry wasn't ideal. Nevertheless, mother-in-law cheerfully handed me her laundry. Here's today's laundry. They're delicate, so be sure to hand wash them, she emphasized, knowing it would irritate me. I'll wash them with warm water, I started. No, you can't. The colors will fade and it'll damage them. Absolutely wash them with cold water, she insisted. Frustrated by her unreasonable demand, I snapped, this is ridiculous. Why should I hand wash with cold water on such a cold day? If they're that precious, wash them yourself. How dare you expect me to wash with cold water on a day like this? Mother-in-law stared at me, her face reddening with anger, but I didn't back down. Why don't you go outside, mother-in-law? You've been indoors all day and probably don't realize how cold and snowy it is. How dare you suggest sending an elderly woman out in this cold, she retorted. What kind of daughter-in-law are you? What kind of mother-in-law asks for cold hand washing on a day like this? I was ready to confront her fully. I feel bad for my husband, but if we're going to live together, I can't always play the good daughter-in-law, I thought to myself, glaring back at her. Unexpectedly, mother-in-law grabbed my hand and before I could react, she pushed me out the front door. As I stood shocked, she locked the door behind me. You're not the kind of daughter-in-law I want. Get out. This is my house. You should be the one leaving, she shouted through the door, ignoring my protests. No matter how much, I banged on the door, but there was no response. I was in a bind. I wasn't wearing a coat and didn't have my house keys. Luckily, I had my cell phone in my pocket. I tried calling the house and I could hear the ringtone from the other side of the door, but mother-in-law didn't answer. With no other choice, I called my husband, who was supposed to return from his business trip that day, but he didn't pick up. I sent him a message. Mother-in-law locked me out. It's snowing heavily and I'm freezing. I'm heading to the nearby grocery store for shelter. Please get in touch ASAP. I started my trek to the grocery store. I briefly considered seeking help at a police box, but it was far from here, and with the heavy snow, it would take even longer. The grocery store seemed like the safest option. I hugged myself, trying to stay warm. My breath was visible in the cold, and the snow showed no signs of stopping. The accumulation was making the streets increasingly deserted. Cars, bikes, and pedestrians were nowhere to be seen. After what felt like a long journey, I finally reached the grocery store, only to find a sign saying it was closed due to heavy snow. Disheartened, I realized my only option now was the police box. I wondered how long it would take to walk there in the snow, feeling increasingly desperate. I pressed on, but I could no longer feel my fingers or toes. Checking the time on my phone, an hour had passed since I was locked out. I tried calling home again, but mother-in-law still didn't answer. As I walked through the transformed cityscape, heading for the police box, I suddenly heard a cry for help. Help! I stopped in my tracks. I was near a bridge over a river. I strained my ears and heard it again. Help me! Hurrying towards the sound, I looked down from the bridge. There, in the not-so-deep river, was a woman who had fallen and was calling for assistance. I rushed down the river bank to her. The icy water stung my feet, and the cold was so intense it felt painful, but I managed to reach her. Are you okay? I can't move, it's so cold, she replied weakly. Hang in there, I reassured her, trying to keep calm despite the freezing conditions. The arrival of help seemed to relax her momentarily. She leaned against me and then suddenly lost consciousness. What do I do? This is bad, I muttered to myself. I couldn't feel my hands or feet properly, and they wouldn't move as I wanted them to. Someone help, I shouted desperately, but my cries echoed in vain. I thought it was all over. Then I heard a man's voice. Hey, are you okay? My husband's face came into view, rushing towards me with a panicked expression. I blacked out. When I woke up, I found myself staring at a white ceiling. Bill, are you awake? My husband asked, looking down at me with concern. I realized I was in a hospital. Apparently, he had pulled both the lady and me out of the river and called an ambulance. It had happened yesterday, and I had been asleep ever since. How was your trip? I managed to ask. It went well. I couldn't answer when you called because I was on the bus. I tried calling back when I got to the bus stop, but you didn't pick up. There were no taxis running, so I ran home. I just happened to see you going into the river. What luck. I thought you had jumped in, but it seems it was the lady. According to my husband, the lady that tried to help had jumped into the river in despair. The cold water had shocked her back to reality, and she attempted to get out but couldn't move due to the cold. If we had found her any later, it might have been too late. So, the lady was okay? I asked, feeling relieved. Yes, he nodded. You should rest. You must be exhausted. Comforted by my husband's words, I drifted off to sleep. All the while, my anger towards mother-in-law simmered. A few days passed in the hospital, and I was back to my old self. Standing in front of my home after so long, I froze. Mother-in-law hadn't visited me once while I was hospitalized. Of course, there was no apology. She had locked me out on a snowy night, nearly causing my death. Honestly, I couldn't bear to live with her any longer. Feeling dejected, I opened the front door and stepped outside. To my surprise, mother-in-law was there, deeply apologizing. Belle, I'm so sorry, she said earnestly. What's going on, mother-in-law? I was taken aback by her unexpected apology. I never imagined something like that would happen. I truly regret locking you out. Please forgive me, she pleaded. I was speechless. This was truly unexpected. Mother-in-law continued. I never thought I would say this, but I'm sorry. Suspicious thoughts raced through my mind. Mother-in-law, who had always been aggressive towards me, who had locked me out in the snow. Could this be genuine? What will you do if I don't forgive you? I asked, narrowing my eyes at her. Mother-in-law's hand twitched slightly. I was freezing out there, you know. If my husband hadn't come, who knows what would have happened? Anyone would know what happens if you lock someone out in a snowstorm. If you didn't, does that mean you're not normal? I added sarcastically. Mother-in-law's face turned bright red. What did you just say? You think you can take advantage when someone's being nice? Don't get too cocky. My son said he'd end our living arrangement if I didn't apologize, so I did it. Now that I've apologized, let's forget about the whole locking out incident. Now get back to your chores, she said, her tone shifting abruptly. She had taken the bait so easily. My suspicions only deepened. I smirked, seeing right through mother-in-law's facade. Her remorse was all a lie. People don't change that easily, especially not someone like her. But just as I suspected, she began her antics again. Make sure you hand wash my clothes with warm water, she insisted. Are you still on about that? I retorted, exasperated by her ongoing demands. Only cook what I like. If it's not tasty, I'll throw it away. This is hopeless, absolutely hopeless, I muttered to myself, feeling resigned. She's beyond redemption. I sighed heavily and turned around. Saying all this, my husband, who had been standing nearby out of mother-in-law's sight, spoke up. Davy, her beloved son. What about work? Mother-in-law noticed him and turned towards him. I took the day off to be with Bill, he explained calmly. But Mom, you hadn't changed at all. Davy continued firmly. No, I was just joking, mother-in-law hastily interjected, trying to backtrack. It's not funny at all, Davy said sternly. I told you to genuinely apologize to Belle and never do such things again. But I did apologize, mother-in-law insisted defensively. You were about to revert to your mean self. That was just a joke, Davy countered. That's why it's not funny. I had warned my husband to keep his distance, but mother-in-law's reaction was as expected, if not more dramatic. She desperately tried to justify herself, but I couldn't help laughing. Belle, what's so funny? Mother-in-law asked, puzzled by my reaction. On the other hand, Mom, I'm talking now. Listen to me, Davy asserted calmly. I'm sorry. Even mother-in-law couldn't ignore her beloved son's words. Tearfully she listened as he continued his lecture. Why would you be mean to Belle when she agreed to live with us out of concern for you? I might have gone a bit overboard earlier, but I've never harassed her. I commented on the food's taste, but I just wanted her to know my preferences. I had asked for my clothes to be dry cleaned, but Belle insisted it was a waste and would hand wash them instead. Mother-in-law continued to complain, adding that Belle had thrown away her cosmetics right in front of her. She seemed intent on shifting blame away from herself. Unable to tolerate her denial any longer, I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Today's laundry, it's expensive, so definitely hand wash it. Mother-in-law's voice echoed clearly through the room. She screamed and tried to grab my phone, but I dodged her and continued playing. Definitely wash it with water. You're not the kind of daughter-in-law I want. Get out. The sound of her dragging me out and slamming the door, ignoring my pleas, was all recorded. Every violent action she had taken that day was captured on my phone. I had been secretly recording our conversations for some time now, ensuring I had evidence whenever I interacted with her. Any rebuttal? My husband asked calmly, confronting his mother. Mother-in-law was left speechless, unable to defend herself. Is there anything else to say? I intervened. Yes, this is the end. You've trampled all my feelings of wanting to care for you. I want you to leave. I'm cutting ties. You can live on your own. We won't contact you again. Even if you reach out, we'll ignore it and won't meet. You sold the family home, right? You should have all that money, plus with your pension, you should be fine. We won't help. But wait, Davy. Are you abandoning me? Betraying your only family? Mother-in-law pleaded desperately. You're the one who betrayed us. My husband's voice was firm, leaving mother-in-law sitting there, speechless and defeated. The only sound in the room was the dripping of melted snow from the roof. From that moment on, things moved swiftly. While mother-in-law sat there, lifeless, my husband and I packed her belongings. Her hometown was a 2-hour train ride from our place. She had distant relatives there, but she had been estranged from them for so long that no one would probably care now. She rarely went out when she lived with us, so she likely didn't have any friends. But now, it didn't matter. Bye, Grandma. My daughter waved at mother-in-law, her cheerful gesture devoid of any sadness. Finally, mother-in-law broke down into tears as the taxi carrying her drove off, leaving behind her sobs. I felt nothing as I watched her leave. It was her own doing. With that thought in mind, I entered our home, feeling refreshed. Time passed, and rumor said mother-in-law lived alone in an apartment. We still received calls from her, so she must be alive, but we never met or spoke to her, just as we promised. She would probably live a lonely life, having destroyed the happiness she could have had. While listening to the washing machine, I served tea to an unexpected guest, an elderly woman, the very same lady I had saved on that snowy day. She had been living a lonely life filled with despair, but the cold river water that day had made her want to live a bit longer. My son offered to live with me. That's wonderful. His wife is lovely, she shared, but I didn't want to be a burden, so I decided to move nearby instead. That's nice. I've been lonely since my husband passed away. I thought life had nothing good left, but I was wrong. I replied warmly. I'm glad you realized that. As long as I'm alive, there's hope. Thank you for saving me that day, she said with a grateful smile. I smiled back at her, seeing a lady who had lived her life with determination and had now found happiness. Mother-in-law, on the other hand, had ruined her chance to live with her son and his family. There are so many ways to grow old, and everyone's path is different. Our own attitudes shape whether our later years are happy or sad. Seeing these two elderly women, I had a clearer idea of the kind of future I wanted to ensure, a happy future protecting the peaceful days I have now. I reminded myself of the path I should take. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me deeply. We may not get along, but we're family after all. How could she say something so heartless? I felt lost. Thomas grinned and said, Well, that went as planned. Mission accomplished. At that moment, I had no idea the chaos that was about to unfold. My name is Violet. I met my husband Thomas at work. I work in the office of a shipping company while Thomas is a truck driver. My first impression was that he's a robust guy, both physically and in personality. He's good at his job and kind to his colleagues. However, he wasn't so adept at the romantic game. Whether it was making a move or proposing, he was like a pitcher who only threw fastballs, no change-ups. But I prefer a straightforward man over a guy who thinks he's a playboy. As our relationship progressed and tensions eased, I found him quite interesting. Above all, he gave me a sense of security that I could rely on him. We got married and were blessed with 2 children. Our son and daughter have moved out and live on their own now. Thomas and I live in a large house. Mom passed away 5 years ago due to illness. Thomas and I still work together at the same shipping company. Thomas has been promoted to a supervisor and now handles dispatching. We had a happy marriage, but one worry was my brother, Jason. That is soft on Jason. Jason has been dreaming of becoming a rock singer since he was a teenager. He's still chasing his dream, pompadour and all, no matter his age. I won't discourage anyone from following their dreams. However, when he runs out of money, he comes to borrow from Dad. Dad, being soft, lends him the money. Dad lending money is fine. But has he ever paid you back, Violet? When you lend money, you should do it with the intention of giving. That means you shouldn't expect it back. Remember that? But Jason thinks he'll somehow make it. He's underestimating life's challenges. Isn't that risky? When I was young, I dreamed of becoming a novelist, Dad said. But Victoria's parents said if I was going to marry her, I needed a stable job. So I gave up my dream and chose to marry. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret giving up my dream. That was the first time I'd ever heard about my dad's younger days. So that's why I want to support Jason's dreams, I said. But it doesn't seem like Jason's putting in much effort. Do you really think he can achieve his dreams while goofing off all day? Thomas asked. Mountain climbing isn't just about conquering the peak. Every step you take along the way, it's part of the story. Well, you sound like a poet. Makes sense, since you wanted to be a novelist. Come on, you're making me blush with such direct praise. I'm not praising you, Thomas chuckled. Initially, I was worried that Jason had some dirt on Dad and was blackmailing him, but it turns out Dad also chases dreams, so he probably understands Jason's desire to escape reality. One day, Jason brought a woman home. Let me introduce you, this is Charlotte. From her name, I expected a dainty woman. She was, well, big. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm Violet, the sister. Nice to meet you, Charlotte. Charlotte is 5 years younger than me but much larger in build. Our first impression of her wasn't great. She was curt to both me and Dad, leaving us with the impression that she had poor manners. Eventually, Jason and Charlotte got married, so she became my younger sister-in-law. Neither Jason nor Charlotte held full-time jobs. They were always quitting their part-time jobs in a huff. Charlotte practices jiu-jitsu and has a short temper, often bragging about putting her arrogant bosses or seniors in joint locks. I just hope she never gets arrested for it. Jason brags about stories that aren't really brag-worthy, like headbutting a disrespectful boss. Two kinds of stories I really can't stand. Bragging about bad behavior in the past and bragging about fights. I think many women also find these kinds of bragging a turnoff. One day, Jason came home to borrow money from Dad again, and I finally spoke up. Jason, you're working, right? Why did you have any money? I got into an argument with a plant manager just because I forgot to put away a card. Jason replied. I told him it was workplace harassment. He yelled again, so I gave him a flying knee kick to the chair. Charlotte chimed in, seemingly pleased. I decided that if Dad wouldn't say it, I would. Every workplace has people you won't get along with, but even people I initially disliked turned out to be decent later on. I've often been glad I didn't pick a fight. You and I lead different lives. My pride is taller than the One World Trade Center, so yelling at me is practically asking for a flying knee, Jason continued. I couldn't believe my ears when Charlotte cut in. Are you siding with a boss who harasses people? That's not what I'm saying. So you're lecturing me now? You better be ready for this, Jason replied. Ready to take this outside or here's fine too, Charlotte challenged. I was flabbergasted. What is she, a teenager, feeling threatened? I walked away, unable to believe she was actually picking a fight. Jason didn't intervene. Would he have stopped if it were his wife fighting his sister? Getting hurt would be the last straw. I knew I had to watch out for that couple. When I turned 50, Dad got sick and was hospitalized. It wasn't long before we had to say goodbye. People said he lived a long life at 80, but I didn't feel that way. I still wanted to talk about many things with Dad. When Thomas and I were alone, he said, Violet, actually, Lawrence. What? Never mind. Just tell me later. Before much time had passed since the funeral, Charlotte approached me. Did Lawrence leave a will? A will? Probably not. He was hospitalized so suddenly. And if there's no will, then the inheritance. You're already talking about inheritance. I guess you're not even sad. How dare you? Want me to put you in the hospital? Try me. I raised my voice. Charlotte grabbed my arm in anger. I was taken aback but didn't want to apologize. Should we call the police? What are you doing? You made me sound like a monster for bringing up the inheritance, so I thought I'd teach you a life lesson with an arm lock. You're the one who's wrong, Violet. Enough. Don't yell. What are we going to do about the inheritance? I was momentarily speechless, but then I glared at Jason. Aren't you sad that Dad passed away? I asked. That's irrelevant. Stop calling me stupid. I don't want to be called stupid by someone as stupid as you, Jason retorted sharply. What did you just say? The atmosphere grew tense until Thomas arrived. What's going on here? Thomas asked. Wife, you better tell your husband to raise the kids right, Jason snapped. Those words crossed the line. I'll pass that message right along to Jason, I replied, irritated. Good on you. I'm fed up with you, Violet. This makes my decision easier, Jason declared, dropping a bombshell. I'm the eldest son. That means the house and Dad's inheritance are all mine. Are you out of your mind? I exclaimed. I'm perfectly sane, Jason said stone-facedly. Just as we were stunned by his audacity, Thomas spoke up. Violet, let's try to keep a cool head. We're not making any progress. Fine, I said, frustrated. We sat down at the table to hash it out. The inheritance is all mine and Charlotte's. Violet, I want you to give up your claim, Jason insisted. That's ridiculous. Our dad isn't rich. If we split it between two households, there won't be much left, I argued. There's only two of Dad's children, me and Jason, so it should be divided between us, Charlotte chimed in. But Jason scowled. Look, Violet, you and Thomas both have jobs and are doing fine. I'm the one pursuing my dreams, so I'm the one who needs the money. Why don't you get a job, Jason? I retorted. Let me finish. Living in the house means no rent, and with the inheritance, I can take on the world. Dad was cheering for me, you know. The best way to honor him is to play Carnegie Hall. You can't even pack the local park, Phil interjected. What if I do, Phil? Carnegie Hall. Will you put your money where your mouth is? Jason challenged. What are you talking about? I seriously considered calling the police, I interjected. Thomas, what do you say? Can you give in? Jason turned to my husband. I cannot, Thomas replied calmly. Jason then asked, so you're asking Violet to relinquish her claim? Yes, and you're okay with that, Jason? I responded, incredulous. What are you talking about? Of course it's not okay, Jason said. At that point, Charlotte glared at me. Shut up. You've been yapping like a puppy this whole time. Such words should not be tolerated. I glared back at her, incensed. Is it cute to yap like a puppy only until you're in your 20s? Stop pretending to be a young girl. It's embarrassing for a 50-year-old hack. Take that back. I won't tolerate insults, Charlotte snapped. Thomas, wasn't it you who should have set her straight? What do you useless couple you are? Jason added fuel to the fire. At this point, I couldn't keep quiet. If you were as big as a hippo, I'd have slapped you a long time ago. Charlotte looked momentarily dumbfounded, then turned to Jason. Did your sister just call me a hippo? Violet, apologize while you still can, Jason demanded. I'll apologize when Charlotte does. Enough, both of you, Thomas intervened. Violet, calm down. Fine, let's proceed with the disinheritance, Jason declared. I looked at Thomas with wide eyes, searching for reassurance, but something in his gaze told me he had a plan. Why else would he agree to such an unreasonable demand? I had no choice but to trust Thomas. So, Jason, just to confirm, you're fine with Violet being disinherited? Thomas asked calmly. I've been saying that. Stop making me repeat myself. It's annoying, Jason replied irritably. What an infuriating couple. A wife who acts younger than she is and a husband who thinks he's smart, but is actually dumb, Charlotte sneered. Leave the money and move out already, Jason demanded. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. Aren't we still family despite our differences? How could she say such merciless things? Why should we be the ones to leave? I couldn't agree to this. We'll find a new place soon, but we have belongings. Please give us a bit more time, I pleaded. If you take too long, I'll throw everything outside, Charlotte threatened. Try it, and I'll call the police. Think I'll be scared if you mention the police? I'm not afraid. Call the Marines if you want to arrest me, I retorted, unable to contain my anger. I stepped outside, pondering if Dad bore some responsibility. Thomas smiled knowingly at my confusion. It worked. Our plan was a success, he said, reflecting on these moments that made him thankful for our savings. With savings, you don't need to borrow money. Even with zero debt, there are substantial monthly expenses: rent, utilities, food, taxes. Taking on more debt would naturally make things tougher, Thomas explained. I've always made it a point to avoid loans, pay in full for what I buy, and save a bit each month. Years of this effort mean we won't be in a bind when emergencies happen. Maybe Jason set a bad example. He lives impulsively and turns to Dad when he's out of money. It was one thing when Dad was working, but he had no problem borrowing even after Dad retired, I added. I always tell our kids how important it is to save so they don't end up like that. Thomas and I settled into our new condo after finishing unpacking. Thomas broached the topic cautiously. Let's consult a lawyer first to initiate the renunciation of inheritance. Are we really giving it up? He asked. That's when Thomas finally disclosed what he had almost mentioned before. While playing chess with Lawrence, he quietly mentioned that he lost all his savings and is in debt, Thomas revealed. What? Because of Jason? I gasped, shocked. Yes, that made them even more unforgivable. Maybe that couple also shortened Dad's life, Thomas conjectured. You're not entirely right, but you're close, Thomas continued, surprising me with another revelation. Charlotte had yelled loudly at Dad and pushed him with both hands from behind. It wasn't just a one-time prank. It happened multiple times. Dad started fearing it was an attempt to induce a heart attack and couldn't say anything when Jason came to borrow money. I never thought they'd go that far. In other words, Lawrence had much more debt than assets. Do you get what I'm saying? Yes, now I understand. Inheritors receive not just assets but also debt. If the debt exceeds the assets, you can renounce the inheritance. Let's ask the lawyer. That's the best course. We consulted a lawyer and successfully renounced the inheritance. Just as I suspected, Jason and his wife barged into our new condo. Violet, you set us up, didn't you? Jason accused. Set you up? What are you talking about? I replied, playing dumb. Don't play dumb. There's no inheritance from Dad, just debt. You knew, didn't you? He snapped. I had no idea. This won't end with just an arm lock. Be ready for a chokehold, I threatened, pulling out my mobile phone. Hello, is this the police? I began, but Charlotte grabbed my phone and shut it off. Violet, how are you going to take responsibility for this? She challenged. That's when Thomas stepped in. Jason, I recall asking you multiple times if it's okay to relinquish the inheritance, right? So you knew it was drowning in debt, didn't you? I had no idea, Jason muttered. Whenever Jason needed money, Lawrence would lend it without a second thought. He gave out big amounts like it was nothing. I assumed Lawrence must be well off, I explained. Jason was at a loss for words, but Charlotte interjected. Nice try, but you're not weaseling your way out of this. We inherited those debts. You two need to do something about it. What responsibility are you talking about? My spouse and I are not responsible for any of this, I retorted. Hey, are you going to do something about this or not? Threats won't work on me, Charlotte challenged. Or should we lay it all out for a third party? I'll share every detail of what happened to Jason. Are you okay with that? How would I know that Dad went into debt just to give Jason money? If I knew, I would have stopped it. Do you even realize you shortened Dad's life? Jason finally responded. Unable to respond further, Jason stayed silent, but Charlotte remained defiant. If you're going to say that, are you okay with both of you ending up in the hospital? Enough of this nonsense. If you lay a hand on me or coerce me, it's jail time. I warned Charlotte. Your threats don't work on me. You're 45 and talking like some high school delinquent. Charlotte smirked and glanced back at Thomas. Wait, were those lines aimed at me? Right after saying it, you coerced me. Coercion is a serious crime, you know. You won't get probation, idiot. Are you a judge now? It's complex to decide whether probation applies in any crime. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing, I fired back. Seeing Charlotte's anger intensify, Thomas turned to Jason. Jason, are you okay with this? Charlotte, just shut up for a second, Jason finally said, clearly feeling the tension rise. Excuse me, who are you telling to shut up? Charlotte snapped back, her menacing glare now palpable with danger. I said, if you want to fight, do it outside. I won't allow it in my house. Let's calm down for now. As Jason stepped out into the hallway, Charlotte followed. I quickly closed the door and locked it. Their arguing voices echoed, but I was more worried about causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Did you just tell me to shut up? What are you going to do if I call the police? Charlotte threatened. Don't worry, I'll call an ambulance in a minute, I replied calmly. A few seconds later, Jason's screams echoed down the hall. I pretended not to hear him. Shortly after, I heard what sounded like a cry of pain, but I dismissed it. Jason and Charlotte had severed ties with our family with their insults. Whether they divorced or Charlotte got arrested for assault, it was none of my concern. A few days later, I received a call from Jason. Violet, I was wrong. Will you help me? He pleaded. Who is this? I feigned ignorance. Don't be like that. We're siblings, right? He continued, his voice strained. I couldn't help but feel it was too late. It turned out Jason was in the hospital. Apparently, Charlotte had broken his arm. It felt surreal, almost like something out of a comic book. Ever heard the term "you reap what you sow"? I'm genuinely sorry. Could you cut me some slack? I can't afford the hospital bills, Jason begged. That's unfortunate, I replied coldly. No matter how much he pleaded, I kept my distance. Jason seemed speechless after my harsh words. Switching the call to Thomas, I ended it abruptly. Don't call him by his first name. We're no longer family, I asserted before hanging up. Thomas and I did go to the hospital, but not to visit. It was better to settle it face to face. Jason pleaded politely, please help me. Debt collectors have come to the hospital's first floor. The nurse told me I'm scared to death. Thomas looked stern. After the insults you and your spouse hurled, it's only natural for us to cut ties. That's not what I meant. If we're not cutting ties, then why renounce the inheritance? Jason looked down, his voice softening. I apologize for what I've done, but I need your help. I have no one else to turn to. What about Charlotte? Jason pleaded. We're divorced. A family falling apart, I replied somberly. Then she's at the police station for assault. It felt unreal. You repeatedly called my wife an idiot. If I had called Charlotte that, you'd never forgive me, Jason said, troubled. People who spew hate often don't remember what they've said, but those on the receiving end don't forget. I have a good memory. I remember every word you two have said. I've heard it from Charlotte as well, Thomas interjected calmly. The wife should be properly disciplined by the husband, Jason attempted to justify. What does that even mean? Explain it to me, Thomas pressed on logically. What did Charlotte mean when she said a wife should lay down her body? Is that even something you should say to a woman? Jason seemed to have forgotten not just his own comments but also those made by Charlotte. Yelling like a little puppy, that's a clear insult. As for my dear wife, you called her a young one-ape or a 50-year-old hack. Don't repeat it. Sorry, Jason muttered. Thomas didn't let up. You said it to me as well when I asked repeatedly if I should disclaim my inheritance. You told me to stop making you repeat yourself because it's annoying. It's too late for any excuses now. Jason lowered his head on the hospital bed, looking crestfallen. I'm really sorry. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive me? No way. Charlotte called my wife an old hag, and you insulted me by saying I'm not mentally sharp. By the way, what does not mentally sharp mean? Explain it to me, Thomas demanded, glaring at the trembling Jason. Jason's eyes widened with a terrified look. If I weren't in a hospital, I'd be yelling right now. Let's just cut ties off completely, Thomas declared firmly. You're the one who said to leave the money and move out quickly, I added, supporting Thomas's decision. Thomas looked down at the dejected Jason, then turned to me. Shall we go? Yes, I nodded. After all was said, I thought Thomas might end up offering financial help out of a sense of divine mercy, but he stood his ground. As we left the hospital, a smile crossed my face. I saw your scary side today. There's nothing like that. Be kind to me, okay? Thomas replied with a gentle smile. Of course, I said softly. The storm has passed. From now on, I hope for peaceful days basking in the warmth of spring sunlight. I'm Logan. I'm 19 years old and I'm studying to be a doctor. I'm from Texas, but now I live in New York City for college. My parents are in Dallas, where my dad works as a surgeon at a university hospital, and my mom stays home. After high school, I moved to New York and I've been on my own for about 4 months now since July. My dad's work inspired me to study hard and get into medical school. But since coming here, I haven't had the typical college experience I hoped for. I've been focused on my studies, which is important, but I also wanted to hang out with friends and join clubs. Unfortunately, money has been tight, so I couldn't do those things. My parents pay my tuition, but I have to pay for everything else like rent and living expenses. To make ends meet, I've been doing different jobs like tutoring, working at events, and even at a bar. But it's been tough. I often have to switch between shifts at different jobs just to get by each month. Weekends are when I try to earn the most money. I never really had a day off. It was tough both mentally and physically. I get sleepy during class, and when I come home late at night, I'm too tired to study. I'm worried I might fail my classes and have to repeat the year if things keep going like this. Studying should be my top priority, but I'm struggling to focus. I felt anxious and desperate, so I called my mom for some financial help, even if it was just a little. My dad is hardly ever home because he's busy with his job, so my mom handles the finances. I thought they could help because my dad earns well, but my mom said they couldn't afford to send extra money. Many of my friends get financial help from their parents, and I wished I had that too. Despite all this, I kept working hard at my jobs. The midterms came, but I hadn't studied enough, and as I expected, I had to retake some exams. After finishing the retests in early August, my summer vacation began. I'm planning to work a lot during this long break to earn as much money as possible. Once summer is over, I'll focus more on my studies. That means cutting down on work hours, which should help my finances. To save money, I've been eating cheap foods like instant noodles, bread, and discounted meals. I also use my bike instead of paying for transportation. Growing up, I never had to worry about money, so this new life of financial struggle is unexpected and tough. Despite all this, I stay in touch with college friends through texts. Seeing their fun photos makes me realize how different our lives are, even though we go to the same university. My friends often invited me out, but I had to reluctantly decline because I didn't have the money or the time. Let's go somewhere that doesn't cost anything, I suggested. One of our classmates messaged me, "Are you sure you're okay? You always seem tired at school, and I think you're working too much." My friend was concerned about me. I've got the physical stamina, and I need to earn my living expenses. Let's meet up once school starts again, I replied. After that, I went to work at the bar as usual, but something happened shortly after. I collapsed during my shift. It was a busy Friday with lots of customers, and as I was carrying drinks, I suddenly felt dizzy. I don't remember much after that, but when I came to, I found myself in the hospital. According to the doctor, I collapsed due to exhaustion and malnutrition. I received treatment and was allowed to go home the same day. I immediately called my boss at the bar to apologize. My boss explained that after I collapsed, he had called my name, but I was too out of it to respond, so he called an ambulance. He had also contacted my parents. "You've been taking on a lot of shifts, and I relied too much on that. I'm sorry about that. I want you to rest easy for the rest of the month," my boss said. This meant a cut in my income. As I rode the subway home from the hospital, I wondered if I should take on more tutoring jobs. I found myself at a loss. I was supposed to work at the bar the next day, but that suddenly turned into a day off. I decided to quietly stay in bed today. While checking my phone, I noticed a message from my friend that I had missed while I was unconscious. I replied and explained why my response was delayed. Upon learning about my situation, my friend decided to come over. He bought groceries at the supermarket and made spaghetti for me. While eating the meal he had kindly prepared, our conversation turned to the topic of living expenses for someone living alone. When I mentioned that I wasn't receiving any financial support from home, my friend was surprised. "That's why you've been working so hard. Your dad's a doctor. You should be getting some support." "No," I explained. "I asked Mom, and she said they're barely managing with just my tuition." "But you're an only child, right? Maybe if you ask, they could send a little support," my friend suggested. My mom said even a small amount of support was out of the question. "No way, that doesn't make sense. I hate to say this, but maybe your dad is sick and can't work," my friend speculated. Thinking it over, I said, "My dad is a doctor and used to drive a luxury car. Our house is in an upscale neighborhood, and I went to private schools my whole life. So why would Mom suddenly say they have no money?" Suddenly worried, I immediately messaged my mom. "Are you both okay?" She replied after a while, "We're fine," but I couldn't relax, thinking maybe they were just saying that to keep me from worrying. Since I had planned to go home for the holidays, I decided to talk to my parents about this. After thanking my friend, he said, "I'll be waiting for some souvenirs." I felt grateful to have such a friend. The holiday season came and I took the cheapest flight I could find back home. I could only stay for a night and a day because of my job, but I was looking forward to it. When I arrived, my parents greeted me at the door. My dad seemed surprised when he saw me. "You've lost a lot of weight." "Really?" I hadn't noticed myself, but apparently I looked quite different. My mom was also taken aback and fell silent. For lunch, my mom had prepared things like salad, soup, and chicken wings, and for the first time in a long while, the three of us sat down to eat together. As soon as we sat down, my dad looked worried and asked, "You look thinner. Are you eating properly?" I told him the truth. "Not really. It's been a while since I had such a luxurious meal." "What do you usually eat? Cafeteria food?" my dad asked. "Nah, the cafeteria is too expensive for me." "Is it that expensive?" It's about $5 or so. My dad looked puzzled. Is the money I've been sending enough for you? Confused, I responded. Huh? I haven't been getting any money, I finally told my dad. What do you mean? So you mean to tell me you haven't received any money for the past 4 months? He asked, shocked. I haven't received any, I replied. Have you really been sending money? I had asked your mom to transfer $2,000 every month into your account, Dad said, surprised. Really? I was surprised. Mom told me that your finances were tight and that she couldn't afford to send any money. I explained. Dad looked perplexed. We have enough money. Paisley, have you been sending money to Logan properly? He asked Mom. Mom looked down silently. I was worried that maybe Dad got sick or something and couldn't work, and that's why the money wasn't coming. No, I've been working as usual, Dad assured. Really? That's a relief, I said, somewhat relieved. But then why hadn't any money been sent to me? I was baffled. Cassie, what's going on? Dad pressed Mom. Still refusing to meet our eyes, Mom remained silent. Come on, don't stay silent. Can you explain? Dad insisted. When Dad pressed her, Mom finally said quietly, I haven't sent any money. What? I haven't sent any money to Logan, she admitted. Hearing this, both my dad and I were stunned. What? Why not? Dad asked, incredulous. There are just so many expenses, Mom replied. What kind of expenses? Isn't our home mortgage already paid off? Dad questioned. Realizing she could no longer hide the truth, Mom dropped a bombshell. I've been keeping the money for myself, she confessed. I was dumbstruck. I read online that medical students can earn more than regular students with tutoring jobs, so I thought you'd be okay. I asked you to send me even just a small amount of money, but honestly, I didn't realize you were that strapped for cash, Mom explained. My mom continued in a matter-of-fact tone. There was a call from Logan's workplace recently saying you collapsed from overwork. I was also shocked to see how thin you've become. What? Logan collapsed. What happened? It seemed my dad hadn't been informed about the recent events, so I explained. You collapsed from overwork and malnutrition. Yeah, but it wasn't anything serious, I added. Paisley, why didn't you tell me? My dad asked, clearly upset. I'm sorry. I was afraid he'd find out I wasn't sending the money, my mom said without any sign of guilt. This is outrageous. Logan had to work until he collapsed because he didn't have any money, Dad exclaimed. I didn't mean any harm, my mom defended herself. What have you been using all the money for? Dad confronted her. After a brief pause, she finally spoke up. Well, actually, I have some debts. What? Those were unimaginable words coming from her, who always seemed to perfectly manage the household and even took care of the garden flowers. I thought. The money was used to pay off my debts, Mom continued. Debt? How much do you owe? Dad asked, clearly in disbelief. Mom, still looking down, said quietly, about $100,000. $100,000. I was shocked by the amount. My dad sighed deeply. Why do you have so much debt? I got into gambling, Mom confessed. Basically, I had gotten myself into gambling debts without our knowledge. Why would you even start something like that? Dad asked, holding his head in his hands. About 2 years ago, I started gambling just to kill time. I won some money and it felt really good at first. I only used small amounts, but going to the casino became a habit, and I started betting more and more. I couldn't stop, and it led to that amount. I had never gambled, so I couldn't understand why she couldn't stop. Yes, I kept trying to win back what I lost, but I ended up losing more often than winning. I even dipped into our savings, she admitted. So you've spent more than just the debt amount. Dad yelled at her. How much of our savings did you use? He demanded. About $30,000, Mom confessed. I stopped withdrawing more because I thought you would find out. She looked like she was about to cry. If you'd talked to me about it earlier, it might have been better. With that amount, you could have worked part-time and paid it back little by little, right? Dad said. I absolutely don't want to work part-time, she said emphatically. Get a grip. You racked up the debt yourself. He was visibly angry. I've been a stay-at-home mom for so long. There's no way I can work now. That's why I borrowed money from payday lenders, she confessed. I was stunned by her selfish reasoning. Then the interest piled up and the debt just grew. I got involved with various lenders, and now I can't make payments anywhere. I'm completely overwhelmed. Dad sighed again. Are you still gambling in this situation? Yes, I see no choice, Mom admitted. Then I'll pay off the debt for you. Dad said decisively. Really? Mom stood up from her chair, her face brightening with joy. I knew you would help me. She rushed towards him, looking moved. However, things didn't turn out as favorably for her. But this is your severance. Let's get a divorce, Dad said abruptly. What? I was surprised. Divorce? I will never agree to a divorce, Mom said firmly. Her face turned from joy to terror, as if she had been cast down from heaven to hell. You continued gambling even knowing Logan was struggling, right? You kept borrowing money, endangering the family, Dad pointed out. That's true, but I can't continue as a family with a wife who prioritizes gambling over her son, he insisted. No way, she finally burst into tears. I'll never gamble again. Please forgive me, she pleaded. But he seemed resolute. Your gambling is likely an addiction. You'll need to see a psychiatrist and undergo long-term treatment. It's not uncommon for people to relapse into gambling during treatment. I'm not addicted. I can stop anytime, she protested. No, if this continues, we could all end up destitute. I have to separate, not just for my sake, but to stop burdening Logan any further. I'll stop from tomorrow, she insisted, but she did not seem to grasp the severity of her inability to stop gambling. I was deeply anxious about the amount of debt and my mom's pathological gambling behavior. In exchange for paying your severance, there will be no division of assets, my dad stated. What? I can't agree to those terms. If you don't pay back the debt, they might seize your account. She fell silent. I never imagined coming home after a long time would lead to this situation. I was just unsettled by my parents fighting. No, Dad, don't you think we can hold off on deciding about divorce? Maybe take some time to cool off and think it over, I suggested. I'm sorry, Logan, but that's not possible, he said calmly. I thought he might have decided on divorce in a fit of despair, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Lunch ended in a heavy atmosphere, and I went to my room. I lay down on the sofa, but I could still hear my parents arguing. It wasn't much of an argument. My mom was hysterically screaming, and my dad responded firmly. I got so fed up with college and home that I just went to sleep out of frustration. The next morning, my mom looked awful, probably from crying all night. I had planned to stay at home a bit longer, but the oppressive atmosphere made me decide to leave early. My dad drove me to the airport. Logan, I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, he apologized to me. No, it's not your fault, Dad. I'm grateful for the chance to attend medical school, I reassured him. I'll start transferring an allowance directly to your account from now on, so don't worry, he said. Yeah, thanks, Dad. It really helps, I replied. I know things are tough, but take care, he said as he dropped me off. I flew back to New York. The rest of the summer vacation was busy with work, passing by in a flash. Still, I was constantly worried about my parents. A few months later, I heard that my mom finally agreed to the divorce. My dad's steadfastness broke her resistance. As previously discussed, my dad took on her debts, and in return, there was no asset division in their divorce agreement. I have mixed feelings about my parents getting divorced, but it's not all bad news. Now that I'm receiving an allowance from my dad, I've been able to cut back on work and focus more on my studies. I might even get to hang out with friends. I heard from my grandmother on my mother's side that despite the divorce over her gambling, my mom was back at the slot machines every day. She quickly racked up more debt. Her family couldn't afford to cover her debts, so my mom reluctantly started working part-time. She's currently attending therapy to overcome her gambling addiction.
When I got to the next beautiful spot in my rental car, my mother-in-law called. As if she had been there the whole time, it was my wife's mom. Then I asked, "Hello, Mrs. Johnson, what's up?" with a knowing look at my husband David. On the other end, her voice was crazy. "Leave David alone right now. Get your clothes and a bag and go to the bus stop by the rocks." "Tell me what you're talking about, Mrs. Johnson. David is going to hit you. He's hiding a gun in the car." That's the game she was following. I can't believe David would. "Okay, I'll leave right away." Even though my answer was a little flat, it seemed to have persuaded her. She hung up right away. "My name is Emily Johnson, and I'm 29 years old. I work in an office. David and I got married last year, but because of the COVID outbreak, we only recorded our marriage. Because we've been able to travel since the plague is over, we're planning our late vacation. Our bosses were flexible and let us take time off for our vacation. We picked a national park because we wanted to take lots of pictures even though we haven't been married in a while. David likes to edit videos for fun, while I like to take pictures of landscapes. We've even talked about making a YouTube account just for landscape movies. Since we got married, our life has been quiet but happy, but there has been one worry. Mrs. Johnson, David's mom. Her son David has always made her happy. Whenever David and I talked about getting married, she always seemed to be against me. Her sneaky advances against me in meetings happen all the time. And what's worse is that she does them without David knowing. Insidiously, she would disparage me whenever I received compliments or expressed myself during a family gathering. Emily, did you make the stew? There's no one else like this dish around here. But it tastes good. That tastes really good. Could you tell me how to make the stew? I'd like to make it at home if it's easy. Did you enjoy it? I'm happy. I'm going to write down the recipe right now. That's fine, Emily, but you might also want to learn some local recipes. It will make people praise you more. It works like that most of the time. She is not complimenting my one-of-a-kind stew. Instead, she is telling me to stick to the traditional recipes and not stand out. In fact, there was a lot of snark when the family left and Mrs. Johnson and I were doing the dishes alone. A frightening woman who was always striving to stand out by preparing such a salty stew and intended to give our family hypertension or something. I took a bite. Was it too salty for you? Next time, I'll use less salt. I no longer even want to eat your salty stew. Next time, do something more traditional. But when David comes around, she acts much differently. Uncle John told Emily, "Thanks for the stew recipe. Your dish seemed to be a hit with everyone." Really then? That's wonderful. What do you want to eat tomorrow? David, Emily, and I are going to make it together. She would smile and smile her way into our talk. To change the subject, it's so obvious that it's hard to be mad about it. After that, it became kind of a joke for us. The funny part is that David already knows about her double-dealing and sly jabs. I'm always in trouble with Mrs. Johnson when her son isn't around because she thinks he doesn't see. But David, my husband, already knows her and even films or records her in secret when things get too bad. David has never liked how his mother's love is too much, which is really just too much meddling. It seems to have even crushed his hopes for the future. So when we got married, David, not me, said we couldn't live together. Even though it was a happy event, Mrs. Johnson seems to believe that I was the one who lied to him. She can't see anything around her because she loves her son too much. I'm afraid she'll do something stupid soon. Another thing is that we finally chose the details for our late trip. With our interests in mind, we chose a trip through some of the country's most beautiful spots. I'm happily getting cameras and other tools ready. David is also getting a smartphone to record movies that doesn't have a SIM card. That's why we packed a bag with clothes and toiletries. On this trip, we'll be able to see mountains and drops. I want to take beautiful pictures, so we need to check the weather forecast too. That's right. Misty and beautiful landscapes are hard to describe, but I really hope it's sunny today. As we continued to get ready, we laughed together. But Mrs. Johnson still gets in the way, even now. That was a call. Like I said, it's Mrs. Johnson. "Hello," I said when I picked up the phone in front of David. I quickly put it on speakers. "Hi, Kate, Emily. Are you really going to go on the trip with David? You've been married for more than a year, and now you're taking a honeymoon? What do you think?" It looks like she doesn't want me to go on vacation with my husband. To deal with this, the best thing to do is show off your trip. Well, we finally don't have to follow any rules. David's business and mine have both agreed to let us take time off for our vacation, which we're going to make the most of. She took my bait and became my wife. What do you mean, have fun? It's probably just a bad trip and a cheap hotel. I feel bad for David. The things Mrs. Johnson said made David frown and keep quiet. David was the one who planned this trip, not a travel agency. I changed how I spoke after seeing David's face. No, it's not a cheap hotel at all. David set everything up. We're staying at a very fancy hotel with a great view. The food is also 5 stars, but the prices are very low. I spoke nicely on purpose to make Mrs. Johnson angry. I'm always getting picked on, and this time she was making fun of the trip that David planned. A really high-end hotel. Why do you want to go with David? I want to go on that trip. David would want to show me how thankful he is for his family. After hearing about the very fancy hotel, she couldn't keep quiet. Now she's saying she wants to go on the trip herself. This is not the kind of honeymoon that a mother would crash. It's not going to happen. It's rude to step in on your son and daughter-in-law's long-awaited vacation. We'll make sure you have a souvenir. Saying goodbye. I hung up the phone, picturing Mrs. Johnson's angry face. I laughed meanly, and when I hung up, David had his head held up in front of me. I'm sorry about my mom, Emily. She tried to ruin our holiday, which I can't believe. She probably just wanted to express her deep affection for her son, she explained. Don't be worried about it. There was a hint of worry in my voice as I smiled at David, because I was so angry at her. I beat her at her own game, but I might have failed. What would happen if Mrs. Johnson got really excited about our vacation and started bothering us? This fear of mine turned out to be right in the end. From that point on until the trip left, Mrs. Johnson didn't say a word, not even a call. I thought she would tell David bad things about me. That also didn't happen. Even though her quiet scared me, we went on our getaway as planned. David's choice of beautiful places worked out perfectly, and I was happy with the whole thing. It was the best in every way. The view, the services, the food, everything. That's why I told Mrs. Johnson how great it was. We even asked the hotel staff to take a shot of us having dinner together. David, I'm so full. Thank you so much for setting this all up, I said as I fell asleep on the hotel bed. It felt so soft and cozy on the bed. David, my husband, was very happy to see me rolling around in bed. He said, I'm glad you like it. Let's go to the spa after you've had a chance to rest. I'll look at the pictures and movies we took today while we wait. The health spa. What a wonderful place. David suddenly raised his voice. He had been opening his laptop and watching me enjoy the soft bed. I finally asked, what's going on here? When I heard something strange in David's voice, I got out of bed and looked at his computer. Our plan for today was to rent a car and get around. We parked the rental car and took pictures and movies at every beautiful place we went. In some places, you could see the rental car in the background. That wasn't a problem in and of itself, but there were times when a strange person, who looked like a small woman, was hanging out near the rental car. Even though we couldn't see her face, we thought the strange person was a small woman. The suspect was opening the car door every once in a while. Oh, look at this. Because we were only there for a short time, we didn't lock the car, David said in a low voice through the screen. I knew what kind of hat the suspicious person was wearing. Hey, this hat. Doesn't Mrs. Johnson have one like this? When I said, yes, Mrs. Johnson has a similar hat, David's face went pale. That's correct. This is my mom's hat. David and I looked at the computer screen with wide eyes. The person who seemed sketchy was putting something black into the rental car. They looked like Mrs. Johnson. She looked like she was taking something out of the trip bag that she had left in the rental car. Then, after some time, the strange person left without taking anything. Something was put in the bag for the trip. I quickly threw it out. It had a strange weight to it. I didn't notice the change in weight because the bellman carried it for us when we got to the hotel. It was a bag with clothes and toiletries in it, but nothing important. It looked like nothing was stolen. After that, a strange thing came out of the bottom of the bag. What came out shocked David and me. What is this? You're kidding me. We were both very tired when we left the hotel the next morning. Because of the amazing thing that came out of the bag the day before, we were very busy. The phone almost always rang at the exact moment we got to the next beautiful spot in the rental car. It came from Mrs. Johnson. David was on the phone, so I told him to pick up. Hello, Mrs. Johnson, what's going on? The person on the other end of the phone from Mrs. Johnson sounded very upset. Get away from my kid right now. Get the bag with extra clothes in it and go to the Capes bus stop. How does she know there's a bus stop close to the Kate where we're on vacation? What about our luggage? How does she know about things like the bag with the extra clothes? She called at just the right time, so I think she's probably hiding and watching somewhere. There were a lot of confusing parts of the call, so I asked Mrs. Johnson for a reason. Tell me what you're talking about, Mrs. Johnson. David is getting ready to attack you? He has a gun hidden in the car. Oh, I see. That's the case. I pretended to follow Mrs. Johnson's lead. Even though I already knew everything, it's not possible. David is hitting me. Okay, I get it. I'm leaving now. Even though my answer was a little stiff, I think I was able to trick Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson hung up right away. I waved to David, who was driving, and then took the bag and went to the bus stop. I didn't forget to act scared, of course. After that, I called the cops. After about 5 minutes, I got to the Cape's bus stop, where an investigator in an unmarked police car met me. Well, yesterday's prediction came true. The agent looked upset and said, I never thought you'd really call it in. I'm truly sorry that I took part in this joke. Please come with me. I think David should have caught Mrs. Johnson by now. As I drove back to the rental car, the investigator followed me in his plainclothes car. Yes, I could hear Mrs. Johnson's words from where we parked the rental car. Hey, David, how did you know where I was? It looked like Mrs. Johnson had no idea that her evil plan would be found out ahead of time. My husband found her hiding in the shade of a gazebo in the parking lot and caught her. Not right now. Today, I won't forgive you. Mrs. Johnson was scared by the way her husband looked like a demon. She was even more shocked when she saw me come back with the detective. As Mrs. Johnson had planned, I had a travel bag in my hand. The moment Mrs. Johnson saw it, she yelled, Officer, arrest that woman right away. There's a gun in that bag, she says. She wants to use it to kill my son. Mrs. Johnson yelled at me in that manner, displaying a proud expression as she did so. I stood still in front of Mrs. Johnson and dumped the bag's contents on the ground. The pants were wrapped up in a small bag so that the men wouldn't be able to see them. While Mrs. Johnson looked for something, she couldn't find it. What? Where is the gun? It should be there since I put it there yesterday. Is this the gun you are looking for? The detective showed Mrs. Johnson a picture. It was a picture of a hunting gun put in a plastic bag. Upon seeing the picture the detective showed, Mrs. Johnson's face went pale. That shooting gun belonged to my late father-in-law, didn't it? Honestly, how did you manage to open the gun safe? When I found it yesterday, I thought my heart would stop. I gave it to the cops right away after calling them. Mrs. Johnson clenched her teeth and looked down when she heard my voice and the voice of my husband. Oh, Emily is to blame because it was in her bag. It has nothing to do with me. Mrs. Johnson began yelling out of panic. My husband and I both let out big sighs. The officer then came up to Mrs. Johnson with a big smile on his face. Yes, we had to ask Emily about it since it was in her bag. Yesterday was supposed to be a holiday, but we questioned her for hours. Why did you know that Emily's gun was in her room bag? Even though the detective was happy, his voice was soft. I can see why he's mad. Besides, the shooting gun was taken out without permission, even though it wasn't trained. It was in Emily's bag, though. Because Mrs. Johnson couldn't face the detective, she desperately tried to explain herself. Oh, so you saw Emily's travel preparations, but you and Emily's family are separated, aren't you? Of course, we're separated, and we haven't let her into our house for a year. When that was said, Mrs. Johnson yelled back, Don't speak out of turn. The police officer pressed Mrs. Johnson even more. Oh no, were you watching Emily's house? No, that's not a good thing to do. You need to go to the station with us. Mr. Johnson freaked out when she heard the detective's line, which sounded like it came straight from a police show. No, I wasn't spying. So you can't take me against my will. I put that gun in there. Oh, she told everyone on her own. Well, I had already said it earlier when I turned the bag inside out. Before this, the detective had been happy, but now he wasn't. All right, a confession. You'll be coming with us on your own because you broke the gun rule. Mrs. Johnson was shocked when the detective spoke. What? Why? Didn't I say I wasn't spying? When Mrs. Johnson spoke out against it, her son got very angry. It makes sense, Mom. The gun your dad gave you was yours, but you don't have a shooting license. There would be no problem if the father-in-law, who had a shooting license, carried it properly for the right reason. You can't take it out of the gun safe because you don't have a shooting license. Mrs. Johnson didn't seem to know anything about gun rules or how to handle guns. I don't know how she got it this far without an accident, even though the live ammo was kept separate and not put into the gun. Even so, Mrs. Johnson still refused. But it had to be in that woman's bag when it was found at the hotel. That woman took it from my house. I'm not to blame. His mother, Mrs. Johnson, was acting badly, so her son got angry. I recorded yesterday when Mom put a gun in her rental car. Of course, I gave it to the cops. What David said made Mrs. Johnson weak in the knees. What? How? How did you learn about it? She was so angry that tears filled her eyes. I told them instead of him. Yesterday, David was recording and got a shot of the parking lot. We didn't see it at the time, but we did see it when we watched the video at the hotel. Mrs. Johnson could no longer disagree with what I said. At this point, the officer told Mrs. Johnson, who was shocked, "Now, Mrs. Kate Johnson, we'd like you to come with us to the station because we think you broke gun laws." When David said those words, Mrs. Johnson's face turned sad. "Why, David? Why is that woman better than me? Are you leaving your mom?" The detective pushed Mrs. Johnson, who was yelling, into the empty police car. "You might not want to make a fuss. When I called the house yesterday to check the gun's serial number, your son's grandma, who I think is an old woman, was very angry. As soon as the agent said that, Mrs. Johnson calmed down. That grandmother is David's grandmother. She is old, but she is still healthy and doesn't show any signs of dementia. She's pretty much in charge of the Johnson family. At this point, Mrs. Johnson is completely giving in to her. She's the head of the family, but she's not mean to other people. When I go to see my in-laws, she's always so happy to see me and calls me Emily dear. She is nice, but Mrs. Johnson has to do her jobs the right way. Her own room and bathroom were taken care of by her. What made her so mad must have been pretty tough, I said under my breath. The detective told me, "It looks like your husband's grandmother has been keeping the shooting gun as a keepsake since your father-in-law died. But the other day, the box with the memory in it was broken into. When they found out that, it caused the current fuss. Her anger was unbearable. I see. To get the key, Mrs. Johnson must have searched her whole room. I told her it's easy to see how angry she would be that her son's keepsake was broken. After handing over the rifle at the station, I asked to take a picture of it for her so she could at least keep a photograph as a memento," I said. My husband's grandmother was mean to Mrs. Johnson. She had cried and said sorry to me and David. A family member who went to pick her up said that she yelled at Mrs. Johnson in a way that could be heard all over the neighborhood for more than 30 minutes. Oh, your grandmother really does get that mad. That's why Mom always did what Grandma said. Now everyone in the neighborhood knows what Mom did wrong, I said. Yes, thanks to his grandma's lecture, the incident became widely known, and Mrs. Johnson could no longer walk the streets. When his grandmother found out that David had broken up with her, she got permission from the police station and the prosecutor's office to send Mrs. Johnson to a farm run by a relative in the Nebraska mountains, in an area that looks like a basin. She could come back, but it would take 3 hours to get here by car. She was working so hard on the farm that she couldn't possibly get away. After some time, it turned out that I was pregnant. The family, my husband, and his grandma were all very happy. His grandmother was already excited about having a great-grandchild and started to work on making her legs stronger. My husband and her are going to fight to see who can take the baby for walks in the pram. I hope she doesn't drop the great-grandchild while holding it. She has also begun to improve the strength of her upper body. It's nice to see her getting her mood back. She was really down because of Mrs. Johnson's fuss. My husband and I are getting all of the baby stuff together today. I'd like to live with your grandmother if it's possible. She's really excited about it, and it looks like she'll live a long time following the birth, taking care of the child with grandma. I told them, we'll figure it out some way. Well, if she lives longer, I'll be happy to. My husband said, I'll talk to grandma about it. I took out the camera. I rubbed my belly and said, when the baby is born, I'm going to take lots of pictures of the baby, my husband, his grandmother, and the rest of the family.
My name is Scarlett. I didn't think I'd tell my story, but here I am with a wild tale about my mother-in-law. I'll change names to protect my daughter and me. My story doesn't start with a crazy mother-in-law. I married my high school sweetheart, Daniel, when we were young. Daniel worked at his dad's company, so we were settled early. His mom, Jenny, really liked me, and with his brother, Devin, we were a happy family. Sadly, Daniel's dad died when we were in school. I had great years with Daniel and his family. But then, tragedy struck. One day, Jenny called me at work crying and said, Scarlett, I have terrible news. Daniel was in a car crash. He didn't make it. I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. My whole world fell apart. I was 5 months pregnant with our baby, Lily. It was a really tough time for me and Daniel's family. Jenny, his mom, struggled a lot with the sadness. She became fixated on me and the baby. She thought Lily was Daniel coming back. She kept saying Lily was her baby and tried to control everything about my pregnancy. Dealing with Jenny was really hard. She threatened me, saying I couldn't move on or leave with my baby. Lily is always going to be with me and Devin. I have already set up a nursery in my house. She will come live with me when she is born. Devin will be your dad. He is Daniel's brother, after all. Jenny, I know you're having a hard time dealing with Daniel's death. Trust me, I'm just as bad, but you can't control me like this. This is my child and not yours. How dare you say this to me? Lily is my child. I will do everything in my power to keep her with me. Don't you dare think you can take her away. As the days passed, Jenny became extremely unhinged. We tried having multiple family discussions about her behavior. We said, you need to stop being so obsessed with Lily. This is very unhealthy. Mom, we are worried about you. You're acting very strangely. I think you should consider therapy. The only one you should worry about is Scarlett. I know this girl. She'll run away with a new man once the child is born. She'll take away Lily and raise her with someone else. Devin, you can't let her do this. She is your daughter too. Mom, you're not making any sense. Daniel is the father of Lily. A new man will not replace him. I'm her uncle, and that's it. I will be there for her, and so will you. But ultimately, she is Scarlett's daughter. Jenny never listened to us. From hosting a baby shower for herself to demanding presents in the delivery room, Jenny did a lot of things. Just thinking about everything makes me have a panic attack. Devin did his best to control his mother. However, she never improved. The first serious trouble she made was just after I gave birth. She came to my room and asked to hold the baby. When I handed her my daughter, she ran for the door. Luckily, Devin was outside and stopped her with some nurses. From that moment, I knew Jenny couldn't be around my daughter. So I filed the case against her and let the cops deal with her. I was at first hesitant to get a restraining order. I wanted Lily to know her grandma, so I put some boundaries and hoped for the best. Jenny crossed all of them. She tried to take my daughter away several times. She also tried to convince and demand Devin and his girlfriend to adopt Lily. They refused because they are actually the same people. Jenny also didn't like the fact that I was seeing someone when Lily was 2. The last straw came when she tried to take her away from daycare without my permission. We found that she had planned to move to a different state. I immediately confronted her in front of Devin. What is wrong with you, Jenny? How many times do I have to tell you that you can't see my child without my permission? Even the courts are with me on this. Still, you keep trying to take her away. Lily is my child, and she deserves to be with me. I'll keep her with me until Devin and his girlfriend get married. Then we will be a happy family. You can go have a new child with your boyfriend, Mom. You can't say or do things like this. We have already told you that Lily belongs to Scarlett alone. If she marries again, Lily will have a father figure. You don't have to worry about her. No. This is Daniel's daughter. I won't let anyone else raise her. She is mine and mine only. Scarlett is nothing but a woman. I will take my Lily away from this witch. By that point, I was completely done with Jenny. She never showed any improvement and instead got worse with time. Now I was actually getting worried for Lily's safety, so I decided to file a restraining order against Jenny. I knew that the restraining order would make her go mad, So before she could do any more damage, I shifted to a different country. I took a transfer and left without telling anyone the address. Only Devin knew my address because he was dependable. Jenny's behavior did have a lasting impression on me. I was always paranoid that she would take my child. The first year I moved was hell. Ultimately, I got therapy and decided to get better for my daughter. I was also developing a good connection with Carlos, who was a local resident. He was the reason I moved to the county. Carlos loved my daughter a lot, and they quickly formed a great bond. So I was sure that the relationship would work out. Jenny did find out about Carlos and tried to call me a cheating witch. I'm sure you have been cheating. I will never let you live in peace. I'll bring Lily back to me. Just wait. Jenny, I have a restraining order against you. I don't want to do this, but you have left me no choice. If you really love Lily, you should get therapy and get better for her. Don't tell me what to do, Scarlett. I don't need therapy. I only want my baby Lily back. I only want my baby Lily back. One day, I will take her away from you. Then all you will do is cry. That one phone call was enough to send me into a spiral again. Carlos and my therapist had a tough time soothing my fears. My paranoia skyrocketed again. My world got dark. Somehow, I managed to deal with the situation and kept all these conversations as evidence. Thankfully, with her horrible behavior, I was able to get restraining orders renewed every time they expired. My solace was in the fact that Jenny never knew my new address. For the next few years, things went pretty well for me. I was slowly starting to cope with my mental health problems and tackled Jenny at the same time. I can't begin to tell you just how many phone numbers I had changed. When Lily was 6, I married Carlos and began my life with him. Devin and his girlfriend turned fiancé were invited, but Jenny was strictly not allowed. When Devin went home from my wedding, he did call me about Jenny. Scarlett, Mom found out about your wedding. I think one of your friends posted a picture. She saw it. She's not happy about this. What do I do? Devin, I'm tired of running away from Jenny. Even after years of filing a restraining order, she keeps harassing me. I'm exhausted. Stay strong, Scarlett. I'm doing my best to handle her. I think your marriage and my engagement have given her fresh ideas. I'm afraid she will do something stupid. Don't worry, Devin. I'll be on the watch out. I'm not that naive girl anymore. Jenny can plan as much as she wants. I won't let her take Lily, and I was adamant to protect my child. I quickly ordered high-security cameras and installed them all around the house. I also briefed Lily's school and babysitter about Jenny so that she can't cook up weird stories. Carlos was with me through it all. Years of therapy helped me deal with the situation better. While the old me would panic and become paranoid, the new me stayed calm and made plans. I was seriously praying to God that Jenny doesn't pull any stunts this time. I won't let her get away with her antics. Jenny's last crazy episode happened very soon. That morning, I was at my office pulling an overtime shift. Suddenly, I was surprised by a call from Devin. To be honest, I had no idea why he would call me at work. For some reason, my stomach was in knots as I picked up the phone. Devin sounded panicked and said, Scarlett, you have to listen to me. This is serious. Mom just left me a message that she's bringing back Lily. I know you will never allow that. I'm afraid she will do something stupid. What the hell, Devin? I never gave her permission to take Lily. Hell, we have a restraining order against her. I think Mom is planning to kidnap Lily and bring her to my house. I've tried to change her mind, but I'm afraid she will run away with her if I push her too much. You need to stop her before she takes Lily. Thank you for telling me, Devin. I have no idea why Jenny still hasn't got the hint. Her behavior keeps escalating. She is adamant that Lily should stay with me. Mom is still obsessed with having me replace Daniel as her dad, but she's being very unreasonable. I know she needs help, but she refuses to go to therapy. I'm sorry to say this, Devin, but this time I don't think I can forgive her if she really tries to kidnap my daughter. I will be sending her to jail. Devin said that he understood my stance and why I would do this. He promised to be in touch in case something went wrong. Meanwhile, I started to plan a trap for Jenny. I knew that even if I left work right now, I wouldn't be able to reach home on time. So I picked up my phone and made a call. Then I simply sat back and waited for Jenny to show up. I had a very small hope in my heart that Jenny wouldn't be this crazy. Well, it turns out she is truly crazy. My house has security cameras covering the entire place. I was able to watch everything while driving back home with a friend. As I watched Lily play on the lawn, I spotted Jenny making an entrance. Guys, Jenny actually tried to take my daughter. I was absolutely enraged by her behavior. Even after what happened, she wanted to ignore the court and take my child. She did it in the afternoon, knowing that I wouldn't be home. However, she didn't know one thing about my life. Carlos and I had gotten married 6 months ago, and just inside the house, Lily's new stepfather was watching everything. As soon as Jenny snatched up Lily, she cried out for Carlos, and immediately he came and blocked the front door. Through the security camera, I could see that Jenny went completely white as a ghost. Then her jaw dropped. My daughter fought off her arms and ran straight to Carlos. There was one thing she didn't know about the new man in my life. Carlos was a police officer. To be precise, he was the sheriff of our county. Jenny just took one look at him, and her jaw dropped, specifically because he was still in his police uniform. He was just back from work and spending time with my daughter before I came home. The call I made from the office was to Carlos. He is the one who picked up my daughter from school and stayed home till I came back. Jenny stupidly thought that I would leave my daughter unsupervised. Instead, she found a living and breathing cop stationed at my house. I heard them say, "What are you doing here, Jenny? I know you are Scarlett's mother-in-law. I'm interested to know what brings you here." "I'm here for my grandbaby. It's time she spends time with me." "Who the hell are you, and where is my grandbaby?" "Well, first of all, you are not supposed to be in this house, and I also know that you don't have any visitation rights with Scarlett's daughter. I would suggest you tell me your intentions since there are cameras in the house." "Who the hell are you? Why are you in this house around my granddaughter? You're not supposed to be here." "I am not an unknown man. I'm her stepfather, and I have full rights to be here." "You are not supposed to be here since you have trespassed into my house, tried to kidnap Lily, and violated restraining orders. I have already called my mates to come and arrest you." No, you cannot arrest me. I'm not doing something wrong. My granddaughter belongs to me and Dean. I won't let Scarlett let a stranger raise Daniel's daughter. Only Devin is fit to be her dad. Listen to me, Jenny. You need to step away from this house right now. The cops will come and arrest you if I don't do it myself. Jenny kept arguing with Carlos while I hurried home to them. My friend from work drove me to my house. While I was watching the confrontation, Carlos kept warning Jenny that she would face some serious charges if she didn't leave. Well, Jenny decided to be a martyr and continued to try and argue with him. As soon as I reached the house, Jenny started to shout at me. She said, "You witch, you intentionally married a cop so that you can take away my granddaughter. This is all you're planning. I always knew you were a total witch." "Calm down, Jenny. You keep forgetting the fact that my cop husband is right in this house. Believe it or not, he will arrest you if you keep harassing us. I won't go down so easily. I'll tell everyone that you were cheating with Carlos before Daniel died. I will ruin your reputation and take Lily." "Carlos, you can add harassment and slander to Jenny's list of offenses now. Looks like she won't stop." Just at that moment, the rest of the cops arrived. They came inside the house and spoke to Carlos about the situation. When Carlos and I gave our statements, Jenny threw another fit. She started to scream and cry about how unfair and selfish we were being. She said, "You are a vile woman, Scarlett. You want to keep me away from Lily. You have no respect for Daniel's memories. Why can't you just give Devin my granddaughter? He's the only one who should be her dad. Now, you have some serious audacity coming to my house and trying to take my daughter away. What makes you think I will ever allow you near her again? She is my granddaughter. I have the right to decide who raises her. The courts are wrong. I deserve to be with Lily." Jenny took that opportunity to attack me again. Yes, this crazy lady tried to assault me in front of my cop husband and friends. She was immediately restrained, and Carlos looked extremely pissed off. He spoke with his colleagues, and in a few seconds, Jenny was taken away in cuffs. She did try to fight those officers, and that added another offense to her already extensive criminal record. She was taken away, but not before she could throw some insanely inappropriate comments towards me and my husband. After everything happened, I took some time off work to be with my daughter. She was still traumatized by everything, especially by the way Jenny tried to grab her and run. Even I am exhausted from dealing with Jenny and had a hard time balancing everything. Carlos has been a huge support to both me and Lily. Lily has even started to call him Dad. She does know about Daniel, but she also sees Carlos as a father. I'm so happy that my little girl is finally starting to have a normal life. Devin and I talked in detail about what went down. He did apologize for his mother's behavior multiple times. I assured him that none of this is his fault and he shouldn't take Jenny's blame. He was a great uncle to Lily and tried to replace Daniel. Devin continues to visit us every week to spend time with Lily and my family. He has since uninvited Jenny from his wedding and is planning to go no contact with her. Speaking of Jenny, she will be spending time in jail by now. She has managed to work towards an impressive list of charges that keeps getting worse. From what Carlos has told me, she will likely face fines along with a short prison sentence. She's tried her best to turn the judge against us, but even the lawyer knows she's a lost cause. We're still waiting for the final hearing, so I can't share all the details of the court proceedings. However, it looks like me, Carlos, and Lily will finally have some peace away from my crazy ex-mother-in-law.
I spent $200,000. Kenny, who didn't even come to my mom's funeral, had suddenly flown overseas. $200,000. What did you do with all that money? Remember our nice piano at home? I sold it, dude. Being from a rich family has its perks. It was a good piano. I never thought it would sell for $200,000. Kenny thought the piano at home was his, but he was wrong. My condolences. I get all the inheritance from the family estate. But that piano was actually bought by our grandpa for my brother, so it's still his. My brother loves that piano and teaches piano now. He left it at our house because it's too big for his place. If my brother finds out we sold it without asking him, he'll be really mad. Just giving him money won't fix it. When I told Kenny this, he hung up right away. Hi, I'm Rachel Schneider, a 45-year-old office worker. My family has a long history tracing back to colonial times and is quite prominent in our community. Thanks to my late father's successful business, we now possess assets worth $9 million. Originally, my older brother was set to inherit the family estate, but he chose love over inheritance, opting to forego his rights to marry his girlfriend, who needed an heir for her family's wealth. This decision left me with the task of finding a spouse to carry on our family name. Despite my desire for independence and reluctance to rely on family wealth, I focused solely on my career, and before I knew it, I was in my mid-40s and still single. Realizing the urgency of continuing our family line, I decided to take action and attended a singles mixer. It was there that I met Kenny, my current husband. Surprisingly, he's 10 years younger than me, but at the event, he showed no interest in the younger women and approached me directly. I'm not sure if you're okay with someone my age, I asked him multiple times. But Kenny gazed into my eyes and replied, I'm a bit shy and not very assertive. I've always been attracted to older, more grounded women. Kenny's demeanor matched his words, gentle and reserved. I sensed he could bring a sense of calm to my family, which tends to be assertive. As our relationship blossomed, there was something important I needed to share with him. My mother had been ill and bedridden for the past year, and my sister-in-law, Catherine, and I were taking turns caring for her. Considering our age and the prospect of marriage, I struggled with how to reveal this to Kenny. Eventually, on our third date, I mustered the courage to tell him. To my relief, he not only accepted but also proposed, expressing his willingness to assist with caregiving. His kindness deeply moved me. At least, that's how I initially felt. Kenny works as a daycare teacher, but just 4 months into our marriage, he expressed a sudden desire to quit his job. When I inquired about the reason, he wore a remorseful expression and said, Sorry, Rachel. The parents at the daycare are too demanding and complain a lot. I can't handle it anymore. It was evident that Kenny was struggling, appearing so timid. Normally, I would have encouraged him to persevere, but with him assisting in my mother's care and my pregnancy progressing, I remained silent. However, I soon began to regret my leniency. One day, as I exited the shower and approached the bedroom, I overheard Kenny whispering on the phone. What I heard left me shocked and unsettled. I managed to tie the knot without her suspecting a thing. I'm jobless. She bought my story about quitting work hook, line, and sinker. Little does she know, I ditched that job 2 years back. His conversation seemed directed at a friend on the other end of the line. A faint male voice responded, You're quite the operator. Rachel's family is loaded, so I thought I hit the jackpot when I met her at that singles event. But let's face it, given her age, I was probably her only option. I felt duped. Was the sweet Kenny I fell for all an act? I wanted to confront him right then and there, but the thought of the baby stopped me cold. With Kenny's true colors revealed, I began to doubt our future. Today, Catherine will be looking after my mom until 5 p.m. Then it's my turn. I debated whether to confide in someone about Kenny. That's when my brother's wife, Catherine, approached me. Rachel, you seem troubled. If there's anything on your mind, feel free to share, Catherine said, her kindness evident, having cared for her own mother for years and now mine. She's really good with Mom too. So I confided in her about Kenny, and she listened attentively. It's good you opened up. Keeping it to yourself could harm your unborn child, she reassured me. Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Talking won't solve everything, but it does lighten the load. Still, this situation is quite something. Catherine looked genuinely concerned, almost as if it were her own problem. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Kenny walked in without waiting for an answer. Both of us were surprised, but Kenny acted as if nothing was wrong and smiled. Rachel, I'll be helping with your mom's care from now on. You're not in the safe period yet, so I don't want you to strain yourself, Kenny said, playing the gentleman in front of me. Really? Okay, let me show you how to care for her. No, I'll learn from Catherine. You just rest at home. Well, my brother's coming home early today, so we won't need her help. Upon hearing that, Catherine looked at me, shaking her head, as if to say, it's okay. She might confront Kenny and get the full story once I'm gone. With that in mind, I decided to leave it to her and head home. But I couldn't shake my worry, so I pretended to leave but hid nearby. Catherine tried to start a conversation with Kenny, but he beat her to it. I've been meaning to ask, why are you taking care of your mother-in-law in this house? He asked, using the same tone as on the phone. Well, my husband's busy, and Rachel has her job. But more importantly, why you ask? Then Kenny interrupted. What? And began hurling insults at Catherine. You live in such a wealthy home. You'd have enough money to put your mother-in-law in a care facility, wouldn't you? Or is it something else? Did your husband give up his claim to this family's wealth? So you're trying to curry favor by taking care of her? That must be it. You'd be pretty upset if you married into money and didn't get a piece of the inheritance, wouldn't you? It was cruel. I was furious too, ready to leave the room. But just as I was about to, Catherine, noticing me, signaled with her eyes to stay put. Reluctantly, I remained silent and watched the scene unfold. You've hit a nerve, haven't you? If that's the case, leave right now. This family's wealth belongs to my wife and me, so I'll handle my mother-in-law's care alone from now on. With Kenny's stern declaration, Catherine felt it was pointless to argue further and left the scene. Sensing the tension, I discreetly stepped outside, concerned about Catherine's feelings and wondering how to apologize to her. Kenny took over Mom's care entirely, refusing any assistance from me. He only provided basic instructions on caregiving. But his neglectful approach led to tragic consequences, and our mother passed away. The funeral took place at the church where generations of our family had been laid to rest. However, Kenny was nowhere to be found from the moment Mom passed away. Despite my attempts to locate him, I was too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements to pursue the matter. Relatives and neighbors were puzzled by his absence. Catherine, grief-stricken at the altar, apologized for trusting Kenny with Mom's care. Approaching her, I tried to offer some comfort. Catherine, please don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. Rachel, it's not your fault either. But where is that man? I wanted to confront him today, and he disappears just as Mom passes away. Exactly. And didn't Kenny often leave the house while he was supposed to be caring for Mom? Where was he going? Yes, neighbors mentioned he was frequently out, almost as if he wasn't caregiving at all, just loafing around. They also mentioned a big truck that came by once. What was that about? I wanted to ask, but with the funeral, I didn't bring it up. Days passed, and Kenny still hadn't returned. Then, I received a call from him. Hey, Rachel, I'm in a fancy hotel in Europe, like the ones you see on TV travel shows. Kenny said nonchalantly. Kenny, you missed Mom's funeral, and now this. I spent $200,000. $200,000? Where did you get that kind of money? Remember the grand piano at our family home? I sold it. Who knew it was worth $200,000? Kenny confessed to selling the family's cherished grand piano and squandering the money on luxury travel in Europe. I never imagined Kenny would pull something like this while supposed to be caring for Mom. Our family home had tight security, but with family, it's different. That truck must have been there to move the piano. Why would you do something so selfish? The whole family was worried about you missing the funeral. Well, once you have a kid, you won't have much free time. Since you have a job, I guess I'll have to be the stay-at-home dad. Kenny's words left me stunned. Despite my anger, his willingness to take on childcare was a silver lining. But it seemed he was aiming to live off me. Additionally, Kenny seemed to think the piano belonged to me. Confronting Kenny, who had unknowingly sold a piano and spent the money, I started with my condolences. Huh. What do you mean? Kenny seemed bewildered, so I explained about the piano. That piano belonged to my grandfather, bought for my brother. So it still belongs to him. Oh, really? I'll just apologize to your brother then, Kenny replied, lacking any remorse for selling someone else's property. Kenny only met my brother at our wedding, so it's understandable he didn't know. My brother is a piano teacher and has loved the piano since childhood. He begged our grandfather for that specific piano. Although there's no room for it in his house now, it's still his. He even dreams of starting his own school with it. The piano means everything to him. I can only imagine what punishment he'll have for you when he hears it was sold without permission. By the way, my brother despises dishonesty. As I explained, Kenny remained silent. Understand? Mere compensation won't suffice when he finds out you sold his beloved piano. He's not one to compromise. I wonder what punishment awaits you. Without warning, the call abruptly ended. He's probably regretting it now. I called my brother and told him everything. Needless to say, he was furious. The next day, Kenny rushed home, finding everyone gathered in the living room. What's going on? Why is everyone here? Kenny asked nervously. I heard everything from Rachel, my brother said sternly. What possessed you to sell someone else's property, especially something so valuable, without consulting the family? Kenny tried to justify himself, visibly shaken. I was just trying to pitch in with the household chores out of boredom. When I saw the old, large grand piano, I figured no one was using it anymore. So you decided to sell it. Yeah, it seemed like a waste to just leave it there. My brother, wearing a stern expression, pressed further. Really? That piano was special, imported by our grandfather from a top European manufacturer. Where's the money from the sale? As anticipated, my brother was playing his part well. Everyone probably knew Kenny had spent all the money on an overseas trip, but my brother was aiming for a confession in front of everyone. Kenny seemed lost in thought, struggling to come up with an excuse. The sales money. Yeah, it hasn't come in yet. Kenny stammered, clearly flustered, but my brother wasn't buying it. You're lying? How deceitful can you get? And what about those souvenirs from Europe in that huge suitcase? Kenny recoiled as if struck by lightning, closing his eyes in shame. I'm sorry, I spent all the money. Kenny's admission left the relatives murmuring in shock. Everyone knew the value of that grand piano. They couldn't fathom how Kenny could blow $200,000 on just one trip overseas. My brother, looking down at Kenny, lifted his chin with his hand, locking eyes with him as he said, "As Rachel probably told you, that piano was mine. Now that it's gone, you'll repay every penny. If you can't, I'll sue you for theft. Are we clear?" My brother's intensity was palpable, almost resembling a mob boss. While this would typically be a family matter, my brother was likely using intimidation tactics, knowing Kenny was clueless about the law. Predictably, Kenny lost his voice and began sweating profusely. Then, with a terrified glance at me, he pleaded, "Rachel, Please help me." His voice was desperate, but I had no intention of intervening. This mess was entirely of his own making. When I rejected his plea, Kenny resorted to a ludicrous argument, saying, "Don't be so cold. I looked after your mom while you were pregnant. I saw the trip as a reward for myself after caregiving. Let's just say we both agreed to sell the piano this way. Since we're siblings, it can't be considered theft, right?" I was so dumbfounded that my mouth hung open, unable to form a response. It was Catherine who stepped in to defend me. "That's enough. Didn't you tell Rachel not to assist with caregiving? You even accused me of being after the inheritance and tried to push me away. Kenny, did you say such awful things to my wife too?" "Yes, I didn't want to worry you, so I kept quiet. But this man must have been scheming to sell the piano without letting Rachel and me near the family home." Catherine's words resonated with me, remembering how Kenny prevented me from getting close to the family home when he said he'd handle our parents alone. I reached the same conclusion. My brother's anger flared up once more. "Listen closely. My wife cared for Mom because she wanted her to stay out of the facility. She agreed out of kindness, not for money. First, apologize to my wife right now." With my brother grabbing Kenny by the collar, tears welled up in Kenny's eyes as he knelt before Catherine. "I'm so sorry, Catherine." Kenny's apology for his disrespectful behavior towards Catherine didn't soften the cold gazes of the relatives. Then, one of them shouted at Kenny, "You need to repay the money from the piano sale promptly. We can't tolerate a criminal in the Schneider family. It'll stain our name." Misinterpreting the situation once more, Kenny made another peculiar remark. "Exactly. We can't have a criminal in the family, right, bro? So let's keep calm. We'll work together as a couple to repay the debt gradually." Even my uncle was left speechless by Kenny's illogical response. Feeling that further discussion would be futile, I excused myself to retrieve something from my room. Ever since the phone incident, I had a divorce lawyer's business card ready. "Kenny, call this number. I want our marriage to end. Let's handle things through legal channels." Kenny's face drained of color when he saw the business card I handed him. "Why? We're expecting a baby. Why are you doing this?" At that moment, I disclosed what Kenny had said to everyone on the phone. "You heard that. It was just a joke. Do you think that's a valid excuse? I've known all along that you were after my inheritance." Everyone present glared at Kenny, realizing there was no way to justify his actions. Kenny responded with defiance, unwilling to admit his wrongdoing. "Rachel, please, I need your help," Kenny pleaded in desperation. He explained that the buyer of the grand piano he sold wanted to return it and get a refund. When Kenny had sold the piano, he claimed it was in perfect condition. However, upon inspection, the buyer discovered a large engraving on the back indicating my brother's ownership. It seemed Kenny hadn't checked thoroughly. Instead of selling it through a reputable dealer, he likely chose a shady one enticed by offers like completely free, and now he faced the consequences. Kenny had to refund $200,000 to the buyer, a significant sum considering his debt to my brother. Despite Kenny's attempt to file for bankruptcy, my brother and I took legal action to prevent it. Now, burdened with more debt, Kenny worked tirelessly in manual labor. Eventually, the heirloom grand piano was safely returned. Relieved, my brother secured it with a strong lock and installed a security camera in the room, exercising caution. "No one will touch that piano until I begin my piano lessons," my brother declared, unchanged from his childhood self, which brought a smile to my face. With his desire to start a piano school at our family home, I decided to discuss sharing our mother's inheritance. Feeling guilty for inheriting everything alone after Catherine's devoted care for our mother, I proposed the idea to my brother, who agreed. It ensured a positive relationship with his family in the future. And so, I welcomed a long-awaited baby girl. While some relatives hoped for an heir, I believe daughters tend to cherish their mothers longer in today's age. Besides, my mother, an only daughter herself, accepted a son-in-law, so if necessary, my daughter could do the same. Embracing single motherhood, I found unwavering support from Catherine, who had finished raising her own children. Grateful for her assistance during my mother's care, I felt deeply indebted to her. My brother eagerly volunteered to be a father figure for my daughter, his excitement palpable. Additionally, my brother and Catherine's two adult daughters, both kindergarten teachers, shared his passion for the piano, bonding with my daughter. Surrounded by such warmth and support, I felt immensely fortunate, and with gratitude, I resolved to face life's challenges head on with my daughter by my side.